Hello, welcome back to our next video. The last time we looked at using IntelliJ, we created project, we created models, and we created a Scala file and ran our Scala object hello file to display some information. We are going to continue to look at what we call string concatenation. A string is a literal sequence of characters that we put in double quotes. Or when you say a string literal, it's a sequence of characters in double quotes. Anything we pass to the print method that we have seen in the previous example is a string. The moment you put it in quotation, it becomes a string. Unless maybe number, which you don't put in quote, then it treats it as a number. So first of all, let's create a new file again. So inside our exercise, the SRC folder, we right click, say new, Scala class file. You select object, and I'll give it a name. Let's say my string, just a name I've chosen. I click OK, then it creates the object my string file. And as usual, we need to have a main method. So say main. We can just press the tab to complete the main method. So when we talk about string concatenation, it's just a way of joining two strings together. Now, so for example, when I say print line, then I can have a statement called hello. Then I can use the plus sign. Then the next statement there. Then plus sign. The next statement Fred. So which means I'm concatenating three strings. I'm joining hello to there to Fred. Now when I run this, you will see hello there Fred being displayed. So this is a way to concatenate strings. Let's see, I can also concatenate print line, the number is plus 55 plus exclamation. Even though there's number 55, because the other ones are string, it's going to concatenate it. It will not add it. So we are going to have the number is 55 exclamation. We are going to go ahead and look at other concatenations again. Okay, now let's look at this again. We have 55 plus 10. And the normal circumstance you expect to see the number is 65. But in this instance, because there's a string before the last two operands being numbers, it will still join it. So when we run this one, we are going to see the number is 5510. Okay, now let's try to edit this code, and this time we are going to make it 55 plus 10 plus. So here it means we are adding 55 to 10 plus the string. Let's see what will be displayed. So now see, let me bring space here so that there will be a space. Okay, let me run it again. So here, instead of 5510, it will add the two numbers before concatenating. So anytime there's numbers, if you want to concatenate numbers, it adds it as an addition. So anytime the numbers begin before a string, it will take the two numbers, sum them before adding the result or concatenating the result. So you need to understand the difference between this. Here the two numbers were at the end of the statement. Here the two numbers were at the beginning of the statement. So it adds the 55 plus 10, then concatenate to the string. So you need to take note of that. These are simple examples of string concatenation. You'll be doing more exercise during the lab session to understand how to do different kind of concatenation and the result that you are going to get. Okay, now let's proceed. We are now going to move on to variables. Now, variables. Almost every computer program needs to store data. We can store data in our programs with what they call variables. A variable will always have a data type and an identifier, that is a name. And it's made up of the following structure. So we can have, I'm just using the comment to document it. We can have the identifier, then colon, the data type. So that's the structure. So for example, if you want to have a variable, I can say my number, then the data type is int. That is integer. The data type determines the amount of memory required and the type of values that can be stored. And the identifier allows you to refer to a variable in a program rather than having to write to the actual memory address. So it's very important to understand the concept of variables and the type of data that will be held in that variable is important. If not, you're going to have what they call bugs or errors in your program. Now, how do we declare variables or initialize the variables? When you want to use a variable in your program, you need to first of all declare it. In Scala, we use the keyword var to declare a variable so that it will tell the compiler to provide a place in memory with the correct size, and it will give it a name. So for example, let's declare a simple variable, integer variable that holds a number. The above is just a comment you have to know. So I'll say var, the identifier, my number, then colon, what is the data type? Says int. Then what is the initial value? So that is going to be 5. So here I've defined a variable with the identifier my number, and the data type is int, and the initial value I've assigned to it is 5. So now I can just say, when I say print my number, so here we are printing the content of the variable. So my number is not a string, but rather the content of the variable. So when I run it, I'm supposed to see 5. Oh yeah, okay, so this is the way we declare variable. And you have to know that we use an assignment operator, which is an equal sign, to assign values to the variable. So to initialize a variable, we need to have the identifier, the assignment operator, and the value we want to assign to it. You can assign a literal value or the value of another variable to another variable. So for example, let's assume I can also say var order number, let's say O number, and the type int is equal to my number. So here what it means is that it is going to assign 5 into O number. So if you want to print also, we can just copy and paste, and I'll say O number. So here we are going to have 5 stored in both variables. So the first 5 is for my number, the second 5 is O number. So we can assign the value of a variable to another variable. So note that the left hand side, which is my number, represents a memory location, whereas the right hand side, which is this, represents the value. So always the left hand side represents the memory location, then you see the assignment operator, then what is at the right side of the assignment operator represents the value being assigned to the variable. Okay, now let's look at naming variables, the syntax and the rules. The identifier you give to your variables has to conform to some syntactical rules. For example, your identifier or your variable name must always begin with a letter or a $sign or an underscore. But Scala discourages using $sign or underscore to begin a variable name. But you can use it all right. Now, as we said, it must begin with a letter, a $sign or underscore, where the letter 2 are discouraged. Then it should follow with a character, or may follow with a character, digit, $sign or underscore. So you can begin with a letter, $sign underscore, and follow with other letters and digits. The variable names are case sensitive, and white spaces are not allowed, which means when you have a variable like first name, you can't bring space between the first and the name. You can also not use case or reserved words like syntax like if is a statement or a syntax in Scala. So we call it a keyword, reserved keywords. So you can't use any command in Scala as a variable. It is also possible to use certain symbols or symbolic operators in names, but these are also not encouraged. So below you can see variable name total 5. It begins with a letter and ends with a digit. It's acceptable, but you can't begin a variable name with a number. So the second one, 5 total, is not okay. It will give you an error. The third one, you have total space 5. Total space 5, you have brought a white space between the total and the 5. So it's not acceptable. Either you combine the total and 5, we can say total underscore 5. We can also see underscore total or $total. It's acceptable, but Scala discourages it. You can't use val. Val is a keyword. We use val to also define a variable, so you cannot use those keywords. So when you are naming your variables or you are giving names to your identifiers, you need to make sure you conform to these rules. So for example, these are some Scala keywords that you cannot use as variables. So you can pause the video and go through and see some of the keywords in Scala that you should not use as variable names. Now, the identifier you give your variable should conform to the common convention. Convention means it's something that is not illegal, but it's a style of naming them. So we are saying that start with a lowercase letter, use full words when possible or sensitive abbreviations, and also don't make the variable names too long. If you are using more than one word, capitalize the first letter of each subsequent word. We call the camel case. So name is okay. See, first name, the first are all in small letters and the name initial capital. You can also use first name all in small letters, but it's discouraged, which means you can still use it, but we don't prefer you to use those ones. We don't expect you to use those ones. We have the camel case. This is a very long name. Syntactically, it's correct, but it's too long. So we discourage you not to use it. I, as a single character, may also be okay, especially if you are dealing with variable that controls iteration. So it's up to you how you want to form your variables. This is just a guide for you to know the conventions that we use in naming variables. Now, these are some few basic data types that we have when we are defining variables in their data type. We have int for integer. Anytime you want to define a variable that holds integer values from -2, 1, 4, 7, 4, 8, 3, 6, 4, 8, 2 plus 2, 1, 4, 7, 4, 8, 3, 6, 4, 7. They can define the variable as int. Double is 8 byte. Now you can see that the int is 4 byte. Double is 8 byte but holds real numbers or floating point numbers, such as 3.14 is floating. Boolean holds one of two values. The Boolean can hold a true or false. A char, which is a character, holds a single letter. Punctuations and control characters. Then we have a string. A string can hold a sequence of characters. So if you want to define a variable to hold your name, you have to define it as a string. You can't define it as a char. Char just holds a character. We can have other types like byte, short, long, float. You are going to go through as you go along to code. Now, as we have seen, if you want to define a variable, there's some examples of declaring a variable. So var, here the variable name is name, and the type of variable is string. Then we assign it to the name Fred. We have var rate per hour. We are using the camel case. It is double, then we assign a value 8.55, which means it's a floating point number. Var letter is a char because we are storing a single character Z. And most often we use a single quotation if you want to assign a char value to a variable. Then you have big number long. Then we have those long numbers. And you have to add L at the end of the number to indicate to the compiler that it is a long data type. So you need to add it. If not, it can cause an error. So you can see that big number long equals to 50000. The last character is capital L. That tells the compiler that the variable big number is supposed to hold a long data type. You also have a result, which is Boolean, so it will hold either true or false. We can also have an expression that is a Boolean, which means if A is greater than B, it will store the Boolean expression or the value into the Boolean. So these are things that you need to take note. So in summary, we have looked at IntelliJ IDE that allows us to run Scala programs on the Java virtual machines. We have also used the print statement. We have looked at variables and how to store values. We have looked at various data types. So we end the lecture here. And as I said, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, click on the subscribe button and click on the notification bell to get new update on lectures that we have posted. See you in the next lecture. Take care. Bye-bye.